Get ready to uncover truths and reality of today's politics. Here's your host, Lori Mills.
Welcome to another edition of Uncover California. Well, we're going to do things a little bit differently today because there's a lot to talk about locally. The Ventura City Council passed an unconstitutional act in their community. This act was written by a trans activist who's connected to the Soros-funded group Indivisible. What this act did is it makes Ventura, the city, a sanctuary for child transitions. It also makes it a sanctuary for illegal immigration. And then they tried to throw abortion in, even though in California it's a non-issue. We passed Prop 1 back in the last election cycle, so abortion has never been at risk. What we notice from these Soros-funded groups and a lot of the people that are affiliated with the Ventura County City Council is they drive fear in their communities. Why do they do that? Well, they drive fear in their communities so they can use them as talking points to get elected. Well, they sure as heck stepped in it this time. I don't know if you guys remember, we had Taryn on, and she's a mother of 6 children. And what happened with her is she had always homeschooled her kids. She put her daughter in public school, and within a year, they socially transitioned her daughter without her knowledge to a boy. So one day after filming, I heard about this care policy, heard what they were doing, and so I took Taryn with me. And you may have seen it. She basically had a speech prepared about her daughter, and last minute, God told her to pray. So let's look at that video just to bring you back to where we were. Go ahead and roll that tape, Eric.
Hi, I'm Taryn Swain. I'm a mother of 6, and the Ventura County Public School socially transitioned my daughter without my consent. I'm come here today to offer nothing but prayer, and I want to lift up my Father in heaven. Father God, I just come to you in Jesus' name. I pray, Father, that you would tear down the strongholds in this place. I pray, Father, that you would raise up the men in this room. I pray, Father, that you would stop. I pray that you would raise up
the time, speaker.
Everybody on this. Everybody.
Stop.
Yep.
Stop. Thank you. We don't do prayer. Please finish your comments. Finish your comments, please. You have 28 seconds.
And I do pray all this in the name of the Jesus, the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you.
Jesus is the King of Kings, and he is the Lord of Lords. And I pray that all the high places here will be torn down in the name of Christ.
Well, as you can see, the demons manifested that day. The mayor told her that she could not. To be exact, we don't do prayer. That video got 25 million views, and an attorney saw it, some civil rights attorneys, and her First Amendment right and constitutional right was violated. So they served Ventura with some paperwork, and what happened after that is they invited her back to speak when they presented the care policy again. We decided to have an event with Taryn in Ventura, and the Soros-funded group Indivisible decided to dox the event. How did they do that? Everything's driven by fear. They started giving the restaurant where we were going to host this 1-star reviews. After the 1-star reviews, they called them incessantly saying that we were a hate group. I don't know if you guys know, I am the vice chair for the Ventura County Republican Party, so they're referring to Taryn, the mother of 6, as a hater, us, the Republican Party, as a hate group. We decided for the safety of Taryn and our guests that we would move the event. We really didn't want to deal with the Antifa type and people being doxxed. So funny enough, a gay man gave us his property up in the hills of Ventura to hold the sold out event. Well, the story continues. The care policy was presented again on June 26th. And it was the most partisan thing that I had ever seen. The city council is supposed to be a nonpartisan body. They violated federal law passing this act, to be exact, 8 U.S. Code 1324. So right now, and I know this is a little long and I need you all to pay attention, just watch this portion of the clip. We have a lot of drop downs that explain how much this Ryan Schumacher and Liz Campos lied. So on June 26th, the Ventura City Council passed what they called the CARE policy. What is the CARE policy? It makes it a sanctuary city for transitioning children, full-term abortion, which was never under threat due to Proposition 1, and they are going to use taxpayer money to hold seminars for those that are here illegally. I think that's in violation of 8 U.S. Code 1324. I'm going to play their presentation for you, which was the most partisan, hateful thing I had ever listened to, and they knowingly lied to their constituents unless they're just completely ill-informed. So I need you to pay attention to this presentation, read the drop downs of how I debunk their act while they are speaking.
So why are we presenting this now? Look, I don't really care where your politics are and who you voted for. What I care about is making sure that Venturans have homes that they can afford, jobs so we can feed ourselves and our family and have the means to provide the basic necessities. But in the last 6 months, this federal government has made dangerous changes that have shattered many of the ways that we can take care of ourselves and our families. In a matter of days, since they've taken office, people have lost their jobs due to inefficient new department led by an incompetent tech CEO. In a matter of weeks, our groceries and gas has not decreased as we were promised, but has in fact increased because of the ineffective tariffs.
President Trump then traveled to the Netherlands to attend the annual NATO summit, where he secured a historic agreement for its members to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP. The S&P and the NASDAQ both hit all-time record highs on Friday morning, and summer gas prices have reached their lowest points since 2021.
The reason gas prices are high in California is the failed supermajority of Democrats.
In a matter of months, both immigrant communities and U.S. citizens were being swept up from their homes and swept from the streets, resulting in families being separated from their kids, all without due process.
You sure as heck don't care about Rachel Moron. You don't care about 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary that was raped and murdered by 2 Tren de Aragua members. You don't care about Laken Riley. You don't care about Kate Steinle.
We have a president that doesn't listen to the Supreme Court and does not abide by any laws because chaos is his weapon so he can stay relevant. We have a federal administration that doesn't understand how to lead as they have removed funding, support, and resources to national parks, research on autism, HIV prevention, research for women, preschools, school lunches, libraries, public school in general. They have removed funding, support, and resources to the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, creating dangerous conditions for people traveling. They have removed funding, support, and resources to Social Security for all seniors and people with disabilities, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, and PBS. I mean, for God's sakes, what did Elmo and Big Bird do to hurt these people? And now, next slide, we're on the brink of an all-out war.
That's a lie.
President Trump started the week by completely and totally obliterating Iran's nuclear program and securing a peace deal between Israel and Iran.
Which is one thing that most of us can agree on that we do not want.
In stories, this press corps and the press corps miss historic moments. There's been a lot of discussion about what happened and what didn't happen. Step back for a second. Because of decisive military action, President Trump created the conditions to end the war, decimating, choose your word, obliterating, destroying Iran's nuclear capability.
So if you're seeing the chaos that this federal government has done in the last 6 months, then you're not paying attention. You're hoping that things will get better. You are praying that this president and his administration will actually help the working families in this country. And while you're praying for that to happen, this policy is what we'll do for the families living in Ventura. Next slide. To add to the previous question, why do we need this if the state has protections already? We are demonstrating moral leadership in a climate of fear. with rising anti-immigrant rhetoric and the threat of federal crackdowns. It is critical that Ventura publicly affirm our stance. What we're doing tonight tells our residents and the rest of the country that Ventura will not be complicit in unjust deportations and will stand on the right side of history. Let's be honest. Many of you only discovered what SB 54 and the Truth Act recently because of this policy.
That's a lie. I know with SB 54, and I'm going to get into immigration a little bit, you're limited on what you can do in cooperation with ICE.
That's correct.
We have had 300,000 migrant children go missing from the Biden administration, and it's my understanding the 101 corridor is a big corridor to traffic kids and people. What are you doing as sheriff to look out for possible migrant children that could be hidden in our communities?
That's a great question. So because we can't have any involvement at all with immigration other than very narrow parameters that SB 54 allows, unless we get a call of truly like a human trafficking type of thing for us to investigate, we're not actively investigating anything as it relates to immigration. We have to rely on our federal partners to do that exclusively.
I thank you for inviting me to testify at this critical hearing on the crisis of trafficked, exploited, and the staggering 320,000 missing migrant children. Today, my goal is to spark action to rescue children, prosecute traffickers, and dismantle trafficking infrastructure. We must prevent children from being lost into slave labor, commercial sex, organ harvesting, and other unspeakable evils.
By establishing this policy, we are showcasing the already established protections by the state for the undocumented immigrants, LGBTQ+ community members, and individuals seeking reproductive health care. In that way, anyone can look at this local law available to you so you can see one document with the many laws that are afforded to you. And further, we're also going to do more by establishing in this policy that Ventura will provide resources for educational workshops and outreach to ensure that we educate as many people as possible in Ventura to know their rights.
So a lot of you might be saying, well, we can't do this because we're protecting felons and criminals. This is false. Many people being arrested in raids today are U.S. citizens, born here, who've lived here their whole lives, who work very hard to earn a living and contribute to our society. I would like to say unequivocally that saying we're doing something to protect felons and criminals is fully misinformation coming from probably the biggest felon in our country who currently is in Washington, D.C.
The lawfare railed against President Trump in the year leading up to the election was unprecedented. This case that he was convicted of would have been overturned in the Supreme Court. Listen to Mike Davis, former law clerk of Neil Gorsuch, explain why. Mike has been on top of the lawfare since day one, and I want him to connect some dots for us. A year ago, he was on the show telling us about Matthew Colangelo and Mark Pomerantz.
We are in week 3 of this unprecedented criminal trial of a former president who happens to be the leading presidential candidate. President Trump allegedly settling and booking a nuisance claim in his books back in 2017. And somehow this Manhattan DA, this Soros-funded Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, has brought 34 felony counts against President Trump based upon a convoluted legal theory that the booking of this payment in 2017 was somehow election interference in 2016. And the prior Manhattan DA, Cy Vance, a Democrat, the prior Manhattan U.S. Attorney, the Federal Election Commission, and Alvin Bragg himself declined to bring these bogus felony charges against President Trump. It wasn't until Matthew Colangelo got deployed from the Biden Justice Department. He was in the number 3 office, a senior political appointee to President Biden, and they resurrected this zombie case against President Trump. Like I said, we're in week 3, and this is a dog of a case. Their star witnesses are clowns. Michael Cohen is on Instagram trying to make money off of this criminal case. You have Michael Cohen out there as a witness trashing the defendants, yet the Democrat Judge Juan Merchan in Manhattan, who donated to Biden in 2020, who donated to another anti-Trump Kaz, whose adult daughter, Lauren Michon, is a leading Democrat fundraiser for Biden, Harris, many others who's raised tens of millions of dollars off of this criminal prosecution, unprecedented criminal prosecution over which her father's presiding. He should have recused. Even a former federal Clinton judge went on Caitlin Collins' show on CNN on April 5th, 2024, and said that Judge Merchan has to recuse under New York statute, and he's refused to do it. Instead, he's retaliated against President Trump by putting an illegal, unconstitutional gag order on him. So Michael Cohen can go trash a defendant going through a trial, but the defendant can't respond. It's unconstitutional. It's illegal. This is part of the Democrats' illegal lawfare and election interference. It is a criminal conspiracy by Biden, his White House, his Justice Department, and these Democrat attorneys and operatives to violate the civil rights of Trump, his co-defendants, to interfere in the 2024 election. And there must be consequences, severe legal, political, and financial consequences starting on January 20th, 2025, when President Trump is back in office.
As we previously stated, this policy aligns with SB 54, a law that recognizes there will be times when communication and cooperation between our police and the Department of Homeland Security is appropriate and necessary to protect our community with investigations into serious violent crimes.
Other frequently asked questions is, why are we allocating city funds and resources just on this issue for these communities when we have other city business to take care of? So let me answer this with an analogy. When the Thomas Fire was blazing in the hills, the fire department didn't go to the harbor to hose down the houses near the beach. They went where the fire was. So similarly, this council goes where the need is, and right now things are burning. We have immigrant families in our city that are being separated from each other. We have LGBTQ plus people in the city who are so scared that they are creating escape plans. We have individuals seeking reproductive health care that are so terrified that they are risking their own lives by not seeking life-saving health care. It is clearly a pressing issue to focus on at this time that is affecting thousands of people in this city. This policy may not benefit any of us directly in any way, but it does not mean that it isn't important to thousands of people in our city. I think one of the saddest things that this president and his administration has done was to manipulate this country in thinking that empathy is a bad thing. To just take a moment to understand where someone is coming from, to stop for 1 second to say, I don't know how it feels to be undocumented in a foreign country, but I would be heartbroken if my kids were taken away from me. The very idea that I would never see my children again would kill me. I don't know how it feels to be a pregnant person, but I think I would feel helpless if someone were to take away my right to choose what's best for my future, my family, and my life. I don't know what it feels like to be transgender, but I think I would live in constant fear when people threaten my life on a daily basis just for living my true self. Empathy is not the enemy, and I would question anyone who tells you differently. Empathy is the effort in understanding each other so we can be a stronger community, accepting that we all have differences, but finding a way to get to common ground. So what will happen to our federal funding allocation? 1, this president and the federal administration has you believing that they have the power to block funding if we pass this policy. They do not. This is Civics 101. There are 3 branches of government because we have seemed to have forgotten our high school education. Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, the Appropriation Clause, gives Congress the power of the purse to decide how funds are spent. The executive branch role is to administer those funds as directed, even with these ridiculous executive orders. More and more legal determinations show that many of them are unconstitutional. On June 19th, U.S. District Court Judge John J. McConnell Jr. issued the preliminary injunction against the Trump administration effort, saying it is unconstitutional and or unlawful because it violates the Administrative Procedure Act. Remember, and please don't ever forget, we have the law on our side. The actions of this federal government in withholding funds till cities do what they want is nothing less than extortion. And the thing about extortion is when you agree to comply with an ultimatum, you often realize that the goalpost keeps moving.
Taryn was also able to get her time back to say a prayer at this meeting. They had to let her do it this time. And people that were howling and screaming were asked to leave the chamber. So there was a victory for First Amendment rights. The city council, by passing this act, what they don't realize is they're in trouble. This has already been reported to ICE. They want to do taxpayer-funded clinics for illegal immigrants. And understand Ventura is a high population of illegal immigrants because of the farms. These people could get visas that work. These people could get sponsors by the farms, but they haven't done it. Unfortunately, we've got a proposition here in California, SB 54. Now, SB 54 doesn't allow law enforcement to work with ICE. So therefore, they have to go into the community to find illegal immigrants. And unfortunately, nice people will be swept up, but they're still in violation of the law. So we're in a real mess here. However, the city council doing a clinic for illegal immigrants, knowing that we have 350,000 missing migrant kids, they're in trouble. It's been reported to the DOJ. It's been reported to ICE. It's been reported to the U.S. Attorney. I believe that these council members should be recalled. This was not their patch to step in. Another thing this act does, again, is to make it a sanctuary state for transitioning children. There's nothing more disgusting than that. While we were at the CARE Act hearing, I got pretty upset after hearing the open that you guys all just listened to, and I had a live response, and I was heated, and I'm going to have Eric go ahead and roll that tape. Hi, everybody. We're at the city of Ventura right now for this CARE policy. Let me just say, there's so much emotion in this room. The guy, Schumacher, starts it off, and it was the most divisive thing I had ever seen, calling the president a fascist. When the people in that room are the fascists. They're the ones that shut down free speech when somebody has a different opinion than them. Why don't you come interview with me? Come debate it with me. You're incapable. So as you see, you're not allowed to have an opinion with this other side. We tried to have an event with Taryn Swain. Taryn, come on over here. The other day, and these trans activists, what did they do? They called the restaurant, gave it 1-star reviews until they could get the event shut down. And funny enough, a gay man gave us his estate in the hills to do our event. There is so much hate in that room, and all we care about is protecting children. And you know what? They say it's a lie that trans isn't happening to kids. They say they're not giving kids drugs. Well, why is it in this stupid act? If they took this act, took the kids out of it, nobody cares who you sleep with. If you're an adult, go cut your body parts off. It's none of our business. But leave the kids alone. Taryn, the last time we were here, you might have seen her. She did a prayer, and the same thing happened this time. They are not tolerant to Jesus, but they're tolerant to everything else. Go ahead and give the kids a chemical castration. That's okay, but not a woman saying prayer. And that prayer went viral. Well, Taryn's here today. She, by law, they had to give her 2 minutes. Taryn, thank you so much for coming back to Ventura. Tell everybody how you're feeling. I'm pissed, sorry.
I know. I just feel, I do feel relieved. I think even before we came here tonight, we won. I think that, you know, it's one of those weird moments where, you know, the fact that the first thing went viral, it has over 25 million views at this point, and 25 million people got to hear about Jesus. So for me, it was a win already before we got here tonight. So I'm just thankful. I am thankful that they did, you know, invite me back, and I was able to pray again, and that was upheld today. I reclaimed my time, and the Constitution, this was a win today for standing up and exercising our First Amendment rights and religious freedom and the Constitution today.
Okay, now another thing I want to talk about right now is the migrants. The fear of, oh, they're coming after the migrants. Number one, SB 54, which is state law, does not allow law enforcement to work with ICE. What does that mean? If SB 4 wasn't around, law enforcement could call ICE and say, you know what? I've got some criminal aliens in jail. Come and get them. But no, they can't do that. So therefore, they're pushed into the communities. And after the LA riots, that's where they are now. My concern, we're talking to DHS whistleblower Aaron Stevenson and Tara Lee Rodas, HHS whistleblower, who found out the migrant kids were missing in the first place, trafficked and given to transnational organizations, and they found out were fired. I thought whistleblowers were supposed to be protected. Guess not. Well, they were just on my show. Watch last week's episode. 342,000 migrant children are currently missing in our country. And because of SB 54, our law enforcement can't even work with ICE to locate these kids. So I am sick and tired of hearing, oh, Trump's a fascist and you're full of hate, when the only thing that I'm seeing and the only thing we're asking for is find the missing kids, get the criminal aliens out of here. If you care about climate change, well, maybe go down to the Darien Gap, which used to be a pristine jungle, clear out the dead bodies and all the tons of trash that are there, because everything you say is a lie. Everything that you say is a lie. And you know what? A lie can't stand in the light of truth. A lie cannot stand in the light of truth. I'm Lori Mills. I'll see you on next week's show. Go team. I hope they vote no on this divisive act. How do we fix this? Number one, you got to stop voting Democrat. We have a supermajority in Sacramento. The governor, the state assembly, which is California's Congress, and also the state Senate. Now, the problem that we have with them is they have made it impossible for law enforcement to work with ICE. If law enforcement could work with ICE, and I'm saying repeal SB 54, then the law enforcement, they know who's in their communities, and they could say, hey, we got a problem over here, we got a problem over there, come to our jails. And ICE wouldn't be in the communities. They could be on the lookout for child predators, and they could also be on the lookout for children that have been sex trafficked into our communities, because the 101 is one of the largest corridors to sex trafficked children. We're not letting go of this. We are going to stay in this fight. We are going to expose those that break the law for political gain. And guess what? This time, I think it's going to backfire. Another thing, President Trump had such a great week at the Supreme Court. These district judges that have been shopped by the Democrats can't obstruct Trump anymore. The Supreme Court ruled that district judges cannot rule on things that are not in their jurisdiction. So if there's not a case in their court, they can't do a nationwide injunction to stop President Trump's executive orders. So that's a huge victory. So everybody stay tuned. Our guest on the show today, we're going to talk to medical freedom advocate Cathy Meehan, and she's going to talk to us about vaccines, things that are being done to our children, and talk about the harm of people that took that COVID vaccine. Stay tuned. Hey, everybody. I don't know if you've been supporting the show by going to themagamall.com, but I just got my new Doge hat. I love this hat. He's got so many new designs. He has Maha. He's got ice hats. But anyways, remember to go to themagamall.com. And if you use promo code Kelly, CALI, you'll get a really good discount. Check out the Doge hat. Everybody needs one. Cathy Meehan is a medical freedom advocate, and she's here to join us to tell us about Mindset Kids. And we're going to talk everything medical. We're going to talk about vaccinations, and we're going to talk about how you have been lied to. So, Cathy Meehan, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. You know, it's been a journey to get to where I am today. I had never in my life dreamed that I'd be doing podcasts, have my own podcast, and then also be a guest on other people's podcasts. But, you know, it wasn't my plan. It was God's plan, to be all honest with you. The journey, and I'll just tell you a little about how I got here, really. I was married to my college sweetheart, Dr. Jim Meehan, who was an advocate, spoke out nationally, internationally for informed consent, the right to medical freedom. It was a path from just experiences that brought us to here. And it started, like I said, we were college sweethearts. I graduated a year before he did and went straight into pharmaceuticals. And because, it was a good paying job, your own car, all the perks that you could get. And then he decided he was going to go to med school. So Jim goes to med school. And at that time, we are married, we're making babies, and then he's going into residency. And the whole time we're vaccinating our kids because they're safe and effective, and he's learning they're safe and effective and all these things. But during his residency, and he was an ophthalmologist resident. So that's basically an eye surgeon. So, they're going to do eye surgeries. And during his residency, he was also an editor of it was a journal of ocular immunology and inflammation. And so one of the things he would do was, as a study was being recommended for the journal, he would go through it and pick it apart and just basically see if it should be published for other doctors to read about. And he came across a couple of studies that linked retinal hemorrhage, which is bleeding behind the eye, with vaccinations. I mean, he knew vaccines are safe and effective. So to him, this was very interesting. And he went to the senior editor and was like, yeah, we should probably publish these. But the senior editor was like, no, Jim, we can't publish that study. We have to think about who our donors are and the pharmaceutical companies because they pay for our books. And
after COVID, I can believe everything.
Yeah,
I vaccinated my children when they were growing up. I just always have thought that that's the right thing to do.
Right. Many of us were like that.
COVID changed things for me. I got the Delta variant. I went to my doctor. The doctor said, go home until you can't breathe. And I had been listening to Dr. Malone, and I had listened to Dr. Judy and Dr.
Peter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I was watching them be censored, and I was censored over the Hunter Biden laptop story. So I sat there and thought to myself, we're all losing our First Amendment rights to even have an opinion on something at this point, especially when things were true. But I had a friend run me up hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, azithromycin, and I started recovering probably within 2 days. Then the vaccine, for the COVID vaccine, and I'm listening to them, and my trust is gone.
Yeah,
so
and it should be.
We never got the COVID vaccine. So
good.
Listening to you, I would say 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't even be open to what you have to say. But now that we've experienced all of what we have, I can't wait for what else you do have to say.
Yeah.
So please continue.
It doesn't get any better what I'm about to say, because
the
other part of his residency that really kind of opened his eyes was as an ophthalmology resident, when a child was brought into the children's center for suspected shaken baby syndrome, ophthalmologists are called in to examine the back of the eye to look for any retinal hemorrhage, which is just basically bleeding behind the eye. So he would see the retinal hemorrhage, and basically that's a check mark for shaken baby syndrome.
So I have to stop you right there. Does that mean that there's people in jail today that may not have shaken their baby?
Yeah, probably. Could be. Yeah, definitely.
Not that I want an abuser out there, but that.
Yeah. And it was this was very perplexing, because there's no broken bones on the baby. There's no bruises. The parents are just like hysterical because they did not touch the baby.
And they lost their baby.
Anyway, but that was those two things. And I always talk about, God plants these seeds in our lives to bring us to where we are. But it was like, he thought, this just doesn't really make sense. I'm getting conflicting stories, but there's bleeding behind the eye. And so that was always kind of like in the back of his brain. And then I also want to preface with the fact that my husband, Jim, was a critical thinker. He was brilliant. I don't think he would get into med school today because he was a critical thinker and he was always challenging the system. In today's world, the medical schools, pharmaceutical companies, they want robots that can memorize symptoms and spit out a pharmaceutical. And then when you've got I was a drug rep, and then you've got more symptoms from adverse events from that pharmaceutical. So they're just going to spit out another pharmaceutical. They are not critically thinking about, Oh, let's look at the root cause. Let's change your lifestyle. How about adding exercise, eating organic food? Let's look at, your environmental factors. Doctors really are not trained to do that. And we really need to change the way we train our healers so that we can really focus on our own health. But so those were two key things: the studies showing retinal hemorrhaging, the shaken baby syndrome, and then a few years later, our first grandson was born. And Isaiah, it was like 2013. It was a hospital birth. And, by this time, Jim was starting to read the literature, kind of start discovering that, vaccinations weren't all that they were meant to be, and hands my daughter a clipboard. And Jim was there and he's like, "What's that for?" And she said, "Well, it's to give the baby the vaccinations." So that's how they would do informed consent back there. And he's like, "What? Vaccinations? It's a day-old baby. What's he getting?" And the nurse was like, "Well, he's going to get his Hep B vaccine." And Jim was like, exchanged a few words with the nurse. They refused the Hep B vaccination. Everything went as normal. Allie was discharged with the baby. And then a few weeks later, she goes to the pediatrician, because that's what we do. We take our normal healthy babies to the pediatrician for their wellness check. And while Allie is there for the wellness check, she is literally bullied by the pediatrician and the office staff that if she doesn't catch baby Isaiah up on his vaccination, call CPS. My poor daughter is just bawling. She calls up Jim, and Jim's like, "Well, you tell them your dad's a 5th-degree black belt, and I'm going to be there in 2.3 seconds if they don't let you go." So Allie left the pediatrician's office with her baby, Isaiah, and never went back to a pediatrician's office again. So it's like, that was another thing. It's like, why are they bullying mothers into vaccinations? If you don't want a vaccination, you just don't get vaccinated. So then we're going to go a few more years, and the documentary Vaxxed comes out. It's the documentary of the CDC whistleblower, Dr. William Thompson. And what happened was there was all this controversy on, do vaccines cause autism? Do they not? All of this back and forth. So the CDC finally, they were like, okay, we're going to do the study of all studies and prove that vaccines do not cause autism. Well, the problem was that the data showed a correlation between age of onset of autism and when giving the MMR vaccine. And it linked the MMR vaccine to autism. So the scientists destroyed all of the data except for Dr. William Thomas, and he actually saved his data, gave it to Dr. Brian Hooker, and Dr. Brian Hooker then collected all of the data, got with Dr. Andrew Wakefield, Del Bigtree, and they created the documentary Vaxxed. So it's a great starting point for people if they're just now starting to understand that there is corruption between the CDC and pharmaceuticals and vaccines.
I'm very grateful for Maha, and I guess it's something I really don't think about too much anymore because my kids are grown. But I do have a grandson, and unfortunately, I don't know that my daughter would listen to me on this stuff, but please continue.
Well, that's kind of where our duty is, to plant seeds. I am never going to tell you don't vaccinate.
Right.
But I will tell you to research. And if you need information, I can give you plenty of information on why you would be like, why would I put that into my child's body? Especially, something like measles. It's a vitamin A deficiency. And we have running water. We have clean sanitation. We have refrigeration. We don't have those diseases that we had, back in the day when those diseases were running rampant.
Didn't we just have an outbreak of measles in Texas? And I'm guessing it could have come across with the illegal immigrants that had crossed.
Well, or it couldn't have been the same timing that Bobby Kennedy was going into HHS as his role as secretary.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, all that timing, trying to create the hysteria. My kids are vaccinated with the MMR, and 2 of them got measles, and they're perfectly fine, because we have to remember vaccinations do not stop transmission like we think or what we've been told. So Vax really, it was a critical turning point for Jim. And we were invited to one of the premieres down in Oklahoma City. I remember that night because when we walked out, we were like, oh my gosh, somebody's got to do something. And Jim is, he's a badass 5th degree black belt. He's got a big voice. He went to West Point. I mean, he's a stud. And when he sets his mind to something, by golly, you're going to hear about it. Plus, we had an independent practice, a medical practice. So he wasn't tied to a hospital or a big clinic. So he wasn't, going to lose his license or anything like that. And so he really started speaking out for informed consent. And that's, 2016-ish, something like that. I was at home with the kids by this time because, I was raising the kids. And around 2019, kids were grown. So I went back to the office to work as the business administrator. And then COVID hit, right? 2020, COVID hits. So our practice was already telemedicine. So we were seeing patients in over 30 states. So really COVID, it didn't affect us like it affected a lot of places when it came to COVID. And because Jim was already outspoken for informed consent and people were coming to him to speak about, masks, and we were going to school boards and he was traveling with the Reawaken tour that Clay Clark had. And we were just meeting all kinds of people. We literally saved over 5,000 patients with ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, telemedicine across the United States. I mean, it was just like, that was another of God's things, the telemedicine and that ability and all of that, and just meeting all these people. And one of the people we met was
really
Paul
quick though.
Thomas.
I have to comment. Clay's been on the show before. It's the only show I have had that was removed from like YouTube. They just
can't imagine.
They struck him hard. Yeah, they're like, nope, against community guidelines. I think it was banned on TikTok too, because I did some clips of him. They didn't like Clay.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, he's a great.
He's intelligent. The guy is. Yeah. Gosh.
He's actually down the street from us. So
he's awesome.
Yeah,
Tell him hello.
In Tulsa, yeah. When he started his businesses, he was never going to talk religion or politics. And look at him now. I mean, he's like, that's all he talks about. So
when God calls you to get in this fight, you can't stop.
Yeah.
That's been the experience with my life. I had a career and now I'm a podcast host.
Yeah. How's that happen?
Yeah.
How does that happen? I know it's crazy, but he did the Reawaken tours and we met people, and one of them was Paul Thomas, who was a pediatrician out of Oregon. And I don't know if you've had him on your show or not, but he would be a great guy. He wrote the Vaccine Friendly Plan and also Vax Facts. But he was stripped of his medical license because he published a study showing the unvaccinated were healthier than vaccinated. And so it's just a very sad story that he lost his license because of that.
Are they going to be reinstating any licenses, seeing the malpractice from the medical boards? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, even with J6ers, there was a guy, I saw him last night, and he worked for the Department of Justice, and they went after him, but he just got his job back. And I'm so thankful for that. What state is he in?
Well, he was in Oregon.
Okay. Oh, God help him.
He'll probably, I mean, he's retirement age now, so he's not going to go back to a practice, but he's actually on our board for Mindset Kids, and so he coaches and helps us writing protocols and things like that. So we got him, but it was that thing. It was like Jim would be like, well, when's somebody going to do something about pediatricians and pediatrics? Because we've been in this fight for informed consent when it comes to forced vaccination on kids. And you being in California, you know that how difficult it is to get a child a vaccine exemption in your state. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yet, they will want to cut a child's body parts off to affirm their gender. We live in insanity out here. It is.
It's very insane. So, and I'm sorry that it's so insane, but but we need people like you to speak up, because it's going to have to rise up from the ground up. But one of the things we would say, for childhood vaccinations, we were like, you know what? It's going to take an adult vaccine mandate before people will even listen to us. Sure enough, here comes the COVID vaccine creeping in, getting mandated. And now you have full-grown adults that are physically fit, walking, talking. They get a COVID vaccine and then they digress in their health, or they die, or they have a heart attack, or they have some, degenerative disorder. And so now we're like, oh my gosh, there is vaccine injury. So we have people now that are peeling that back, going, okay, well, if there's vaccine injury with the COVID vaccine, maybe there really is vaccine injury with the childhood vaccination schedule. And that's how you have people like Peter McCullough. He was never anti-vaccine. He never was. I mean, I still remember being on a speaking engagement where he and Jim were both speaking. And I was sitting in the audience and Peter was right next to me working on his laptop. And it happened to be a medical freedom where there was a lot of vaccine injury from childhood vaccines. And moms were going across the stage giving their testimonies. And I remember when the moms started going across the stage talking about, their child's regression into autism and all these things, he literally stopped working on his computer and looked up and started listening because he had no idea about the childhood vaccines. And if you look at him now, I mean, bless his heart, he is out there just attacking the childhood vaccine schedule, which they should, because there are no safety studies showing, inert placebos, and we can get into all that, but it's just absolutely ridiculous. But the point was, where's the pediatric alternative for these kids? Because we've got to get healthy kids out of the pediatricians' offices because they don't need to be going there just to get vaccinations, right? So a lot of that is, parent education. And just one of the stats, infants in the United States are 76% more likely to die before their first birthday in the United States compared to other wealthy nations. So that's compared to other nations with running water, sanitation, refrigeration, all of those things. And it's primarily due to like premature birth or sudden infant death syndrome, which is called SIDS. And just FYI, one of his quotes was, SIDS is not a mystery. It's a vaccine injury. If you look at any package insert for the childhood vaccinations, you're going to see listed in the adverse reactions, SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. There's even more stuff to back it up now as we're starting to uncover and dig out some of these studies showing anything from liver enzymes that are not developed yet in a child, and they're getting all these vaccines and they can't clear the toxinations or the heavy metals or the polysorbate 80 or all of the things that are in these vaccines, because it's not just a little virus and some saline solution like I once thought.
Yeah, I thought it was like chicken egg, and then now it's this whole mRNA technology. Is there any safe vaccine? The argument is always about polio. Well, if we didn't have the vaccine, everybody would have polio and die. Where are you on that? Like, is there any vaccine that is, you should probably get that one? Or is it something that you just say, do research?
Great question. I like to point people to resources so they can do some research. I would start Dissolving Illusions. It's by Suzanne Humphries. If you can get Suzanne Humphries, she goes through all of the childhood diseases before the vaccine was there, and then after the vaccine, some of the other causes, some of the things they rename. Polio, I mean, it can be Guillain-Barré syndrome now, which is very common. All they do is they change the name of the adverse event so you think that it's gone away when it really hasn't gone away. The other mention of that is, let's just take, for example, the measles vaccine. Measles is a relatively benign illness. It's a rash, it's a fever, and it's, some malaise, your child's gonna be tired. And what you do, you just support the symptoms. That's all you do. Keep your child hydrated, give them vitamin A. A lot of times it's a vitamin A deficiency. And measles in the United States is not a death sentence. And also, the measles vaccine does not stop transmission. So just because you get the MMR vaccine does not mean you're not going to transmit it to somebody else.
Yeah, that's something I remember during COVID was Dr. Malone literally saying the vaccine is shedding.
Right.
It's spreading the virus.
Yeah, and it does not stop transmission. I love the little clips of Biden and everybody saying, and Michelle Walensky, was that her name? And she was saying, you have to take the COVID vaccine so that you don't give COVID to your grandma. I mean, and that was just BS, complete BS. They should be tried for that. They really should. Anyway.
Yeah, I believe that as well. I think I was so shocked to see this country shut down the way it was. It's like we failed that test with tyranny.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I just pray that enough people woke up. I really feel like the tide is turning and the wave is growing so big that if they tried to do something like that again, they're not going to get away with it. I mean, they blew it. And not only did they blow it for a vaccine mandate, if you look at the childhood vaccination schedule, there's areas that 60% of parents are declining childhood vaccines or declining some of them. And you asked me if I recommended any vaccinations. At this point in time, there is not a vaccine that I do recommend. One might come out, but instead, our focus is really on keeping the body healthy and supporting it. If you get the chicken pox, I mean, that's a mild childhood disease. Support that. I mean, and you also have to look at risks, benefits, and alternatives of the vaccine and of the actual disease. The actual varicella vaccine, which is the chickenpox vaccine, the ingredients, it literally has more human DNA particles than it does the varicella antigen.
Okay, so I have to stop you. Are you telling me that we have baby body parts in our vaccines? And
come on, you know that. Do you
I know.
that?
I know that. It's just, there may be some people watching that don't.
Yeah,
but,
and there's another great thing. It was on my husband's bucket list to do a segment on the high wire, which is another great resource for people to go to. And he did a whole segment on the use of aborted fetal cells in the manufacturing and process of vaccinations. And it's horrific. It's horrific. The number of fetuses that they had to go through before they found the perfect fetus. And you have to understand,
it's a baby.
And they take the baby alive and then they divide it up on the table. It's just absolutely. It is literally horrific. It is horrific.
So Cathy, I want you to tell us a little bit about Mindset Kids because we're down to 5 minutes already, believe it or not.
Oh my God, I can do it in 5 minutes. So
go.
So what do I do if I have a child or a grandchild and I need a pediatrician, right? So this was my husband's baby. We use those things, the telemedicine, our amazing team that we have here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we created a nationwide telemedicine pediatric clinic. Our focus, though, is empowering parents with the knowledge for natural and holistic treatments that they can do at home first. First, those minor things, your fevers, your coughs, your colds, your stubbed toes. How do you parents actually treat those? So we have a natural health guide. Looks like this, written by our natural health consultant, Meg, my husband, and Paul Thomas. And in it, there's very common health elements. It'll tell you natural things to do. And
I want that.
Call the doctor. Absolutely. So, and we give you a home kit. It's a little box. And in the kit, you have your tools. You can measure your child's length and head circumference, right? If we're tracking stepping stones for your babies, a pulse ox to measure pulse, thermometer, a cute little notebook, And the coolest little apparatus is this is an otoscope that connects to your smartphone. So you can look into your child's ear, send us pictures, send us video. You can look up the nose, down the throat, if you have skin lesions on their skin, and you can send us pictures. But the whole goal is to have a resource for parents. Now, it's $24.99 a month, whether you have 1 or 10 kids, and they're free doctor consults. So that's how it works. We empower the parents. You have a handy home kit. The kit is $49. And you get that, and then it's a membership of $25 a month, whether you have 1 or 10 kids. And we are the resource to help parents take care of their children's health all by themselves. We've got a nurse line, we've got webinars, we've got newsletters, we've got journals, we've got supplements. I mean, we've got everything that you need. And we tell you what books to read, like Dissolving Illusions, what documentaries to look at, and we are just the resource for parents. That's
well,
it.
That's fabulous. Cathy, I'm so glad that you came on today. Are you on social media, or is there a website that people can go to find you?
Yes, you can go to meehanmd.com and you'll find everything. You'll find links to our social media. You'll find links to Mindset Kids. You'll find my email address if you want to get in touch with me, because I'm always looking for functional medicine pediatricians that want to coordinate with us. And I would be more than happy to answer questions that way to your fine folks. Mm-hmm.
Well, I thank you so much for coming on, and we'll have to do this again. You're very fun to talk to. Went very fast.
Oh, why, thank you. You were great. You were great.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Cathy. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in this week. Next week, we've got a candidate for Los Angeles Sheriff. His name is Oscar Martinez, and it should be really interesting to see what he has to say with the lawless, and I do mean lawless, Los Angeles. And then another special guest. But you're going to have to tune in to find out who that is. See you next week. If you enjoyed this video, remember to follow me on X at Lori Mills, 4CA42, Uncover Kelly on Rumble, and Uncover California on YouTube.